Hey everyone, welcome back to Connecting the Dots. I have another amazing episode for you today with a good friend and colleague of mine, Lara Days. Lara and I have known each other for about a year and a half, and we actually teach at the same yoga studio here in Dallas, Black Swan Yoga. So if you're local, please come take a class with us. We'd love to see you. One of the reasons why I really wanted to have Lara on the show is because since I've known her, we've had really good, deep, nuanced conversations about both being entrepreneurs and business owners, as well as working in the health and wellness space and how we show up for ourselves and how we show up for our clients. And we've had conversations about body image. We've had conversations about diet culture and the impact that it's had on us and a lot of our clients. And we've had a lot of conversations about intuitive eating, as Lara is a certified intuitive eating counselor. And as part of my certified nutrition specialist candidacy, when I was under supervision, my supervisors really wanted me and the other supervisees to read the intuitive eating book and go through the intuitive eating workbook. The main reason for that was to make sure that we were not carrying any biases or holding on to negative food beliefs or food rules that were not going to serve us and would definitely not serve our clients if we imparted those things onto them. And so I've really enjoyed having conversations with Lara about intuitive eating and all of the nuances that go into our relationship with food. And I know that you're really going to enjoy our conversation today. We tackle a lot of different topics, from just defining intuitive eating to the principles that we've struggled with ourselves, to why weight loss might not be the best health and wellness goal for you, to how you should be talking to your friends, and just so many different areas of wellness that I think that you're going to find really interesting and informative, because not a lot of people are talking about this stuff. So Lara and I have had quite a few coffee matcha dates. So I encourage you to grab a nice beverage, maybe a coffee, maybe a matcha, maybe a mocktail, and sit back and enjoy this episode. Lara Days is a certified intuitive eating counselor, yoga instructor, and certified health and wellness coach, board certified, who is on a mission to dismantle the diet industry and empower people to live their happiest, healthiest, most confident lives. Lara focuses on helping you improve your mindset, unlearn your past conditioning, and trust your body so that you can find food freedom, ditch diet culture, and step into your power. The work that she does won't just change your relationship with your body, it will change the way you show up in every aspect of your life. Enjoy the episode.
This is Lara Days. I am a board certified health and wellness coach, as well as a certified intuitive eating counselor. I know a lot of people don't know what that means, but I'm sure we'll get into that. I am also a yoga teacher. I coach F45. I'm a singer. I do a lot of things, but ultimately, my goal in my business is to help people experience a healthy and happy and joyful relationship with food, body, movement, and themselves.
Love that. And how did you get into intuitive eating?
So that was kind of a weird, unintentional transition. My background is in music. So I went to undergrad for voice performance and music education. I got my master's degree in voice performance with an emphasis in choral conducting, and never ever ever saw myself doing anything other than music. And throughout that time, I was also an athlete. I grew up playing sports. I played college softball, and I kind of started dabbling in the health and wellness space really after college because I didn't know what to do anymore when I didn't have a team sport. And so that's kind of where I started getting curious, tried different ways of eating, different types of workouts. And I guess it was not until like 2019, I had been sharing a little bit on social media just about my own journey, and people started asking me for help. And I know a lot of influencers on the interwebs aren't going to like that I say this, but you can't actually help people if you don't have certifications, or shouldn't be, I should say. So I did my precision nutrition nutrition coaching certification, started coaching people. I'm going to put that in quotes because I wasn't really coaching them. That's kind of a different conversation. I was doing what my coaches had done, which is like track these habits, track these macros. Ta-da! But that's not coaching. And I learned very quickly when I started and I was coaching nutrition, weight loss. I would have my clients take progress photos, get on the scale, take measurements. And inevitably, what would happen is they would still struggle with eating and with food and with movement. And I was like, okay, well, clearly just telling someone what to do is not helping. So let me start to dig deeper. And in doing that, I started asking deeper questions about their relationship with food, about things that may have happened when they were younger that might impact their relationship with food, their beliefs about themselves, and their self-concept. And at that point, people started asking me if I was an intuitive eating counselor. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. So, no. And after like 4, 5, 6 people asked me that question, I was like, okay, I guess I'll look into what this is. And so I read the intuitive eating book and, of course, was like, yeah, this actually kind of is what I've been doing. I haven't been calling it intuitive eating. I haven't been spelling out the principles for people, but ultimately that's what I had been coaching people on. And so that's when I decided that I wanted to use the intuitive eating methodology, the principles, the resources. And so I think it was 2022, I got certified as an intuitive eating counselor. And that's where I essentially transitioned my business to be intuitive eating focused.
That is so cool. I didn't even know that whole journey.
It was a lot, but yes, it was like kind of a long and winding road, so to speak, to get there.
We always get where we're meant to be. And I just got so interested in finding out how you did stumble upon intuitive eating that I didn't ask you our opening question this season. So, what is a daily ritual or habit of yours?
Ooh, I so I have a very short morning routine. I do the Wordle. I do a meditation while I'm still in bed. And anything after that is kind of whatever I'm feeling during the day. But like pretty consistently, I wake up, I do the Wordle, I do a meditation. I usually just find something on Insight Timer, and then I get up and start my day.
I love that. How's that impacted the way that your day goes when you consistently do that?
I don't know that it has a huge impact, but I will say that doing something before getting on social media is key. There have been times in the past where I've immediately gotten on, Instagram or Threads or Facebook, and like people are being assholes and something went viral, I'm dysregulated, and that does not set me up for a good day. And so I think just being able to do something for myself and take some time waking up before giving any of my attention to the outside world just helps me stay in a more regulated state.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that because sometimes I forget to ask, why do you do this ritual? How does it impact you in any way? So, thank you. Switching back to the intuitive eating stuff, so funny. I literally have the workbook on my desk,
Nice.
blurred, but it's real. And I learned about intuitive eating from my supervisors after I got my master's in nutrition. They were like, this is so great that you learned all the macros, micros, how things digest in your body, all that good stuff. But they were like, you need to know how to talk to people and like what people go through because they're humans. And if you just, what you said about, if you just tell them, eat this much protein, eat this much carbs, they might totally be on board with that, or they might be like, I'm not motivated to do that. I don't know why I'm doing that. And that's a lot of work. No, thank you. And so they're like, this is something, it was a mandatory for us to do under their supervision. If we were going to be practicing under their license, we needed to have the intuitive eating workbook and books knowledge to bring to our practice and not cause harm with clients, but instead help them foster a healthy relationship with food while we're helping them heal. So when I found out that you were actually a certified intuitive eating counselor and went through all the bigger steps than just reading a book, I was like, oh, this is so cool, because I did one teeny tiny baby step of this process, but I know that there's so much more that goes into it. So for listeners, can you explain what intuitive eating is?
Yeah. So I think most people can understand the concept, which is that you eat according to your body's cues. Now, what most people do not understand is that intuitive eating, capital I, capital E, is actually a framework to help people be able to do that. And I get a lot of pushback from people who say things like, well, I can't be an intuitive eater because I can't feel my hunger and fullness cues. And it's like, right, that's what I teach you how to do. Or I can't be an intuitive eater because I would only eat crumble cookies all day. And it's like, actually, if you understand what intuitive eating is, that's not intuitive eating at all, because it requires honoring your body with gentle nutrition, which we're not doing if we're only eating crumble cookies. It means feeling your fullness, which we're not doing if we're overeating anything, whether it's broccoli or cookies, right? So intuitive eating is a set of 10 principles that will help you eat according to your body's own unique needs.
Yeah. I love how you explain that too, because that is a pushback that I've gotten before of like, well, what if I don't understand my hunger and fullness cues? What if I don't have a healthy relationship with food? How am I supposed to follow this principle? And I was like, well, that's what you learn.
Right. Yeah, for
If,
sure.
if you knew your hunger and fullness cues, and if you already had a healthy relationship with food, perhaps you might not need the framework. So yeah, I appreciate you kind of breaking that down. I'm trying to think of how I want to say this. What have you found with working with clients and breaking it down through the program that you facilitate? How have you helped it feel more manageable for people?
Yeah, I think first of all, just working with a professional automatically makes it more manageable because you have a support system in place, you have accountability in place, you have a cheerleader in place, you have in most of my clients' case a community in place. I offer a lot of group coaching programs and I have a membership community. So like all of those things are automatically going to make this work easier and more fun. I also think looking at each principle individually makes it feel more manageable, because if you are only focused on the end goal of like, okay, I'm going to eat foods that feel good in my body, I'm going to honor my hunger, I'm going to feel my fullness, I'm going to feel my feelings, I'm going to move joyfully, I'm going to do all these things, like that feels really overwhelming. And so if we break it down and look at, cool, let's start by rejecting the diet mentality. Principle number 1, where are you noticing your brain reflecting diet culture? Let's start there. And we literally can just work on that one principle until you're like, okay, cool. I'm bought in. I'm ditching diet culture. I understand how it's harmful. I've read the research that you've provided me that tells me that this is not actually healthy. Not that you have to read all the research studies, but I do provide them to my clients in case they want to read them, because I am a skeptic to the max and I needed to read all of the research before I bought in. So I provide that, right? And so like just looking at each principle on its own and knowing that not everyone is going to struggle with all 10 of the principles. I have some clients that are like, actually, I'm really good at eating when I'm hungry. What I'm not good at is coping with my emotions with kindness. And so I use food as my only coping mechanism. And so then that work is going to be, let's regulate your nervous system. Let's look at why you feel like you are not safe to feel your feelings. Let's find some other coping mechanisms to put in your toolbox. And that might be the one principle that kind of unlocks intuitive eating for that person, so to speak.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And that resonated with me because when I went through the book, I'm like, I'm a nutritionist. Like, I have a great relationship with food. I love food. I love eating. I love cooking. I am grateful that my parents always promoted a healthy relationship with food. So they never commented on my body or how much or how little I was eating. And sometimes they'd be like, you played 6 hours of sports today. You probably should eat more. But they weren't like, it wasn't
Yeah.
an unhealthy way. They were just like, you ran your ass off calories here. And so I felt very lucky. But being in this world, I actually had a hard time. I went back to check the precise name with Challenge the Food Police. That
Mm.
was where I was surprised because I was like, this workbook is going to be a breeze. Like,
Uh-huh.
good. And I spent a lot of time in that chapter because I went to school for this. I've done a lot of outside research for this. I have a podcast where I talk to a bunch of different people and they share all their different opinions. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. There's a whole other level of like should and shouldn't and food morality and things like that that I think when you're in this profession. Another one I hear from folks in the industry is respecting your body, like being okay with your body looking differently than other people in the industry, knowing that your body's not your business card. Like it is really interesting. Mine was joyful movement. I had a really tumultuous relationship with movement for several years in my 20s where I would feel so guilty missing workouts. I would like double up if I missed a workout. I wouldn't eat as much if I missed a workout. Like it was very, and I tried to tell myself it was because I was paying a trainer for the programming. I was like, well, I'm wasting money, but like really, I just felt guilty and I thought that my body would like change overnight if I didn't work out. So yeah, it is. I love that you shared that because I would imagine that even folks who generally have a good relationship with food in their bodies would probably still find something that resonates where they might be like, "Ooh, yeah, I actually could look at this a little bit more deeply."
100%. And it's very interesting what comes up because sometimes it's stuff that you haven't really given much thought to, or some stuff you've given a lot of thought to, and then you're like,
Uh-huh.
what? Which is why I love that you brought up the first principle of the, what is it? I usually,
Rejecting the
I was,
diet
I was
mentality.
going to
Yeah.
say fuck the diet mentality, but I
I
knew that
mean, yeah,
that
that
was
works too.
not, I knew they didn't write that in the book. Um, but something that I was really surprised by when I read it the first time was how no diets work. And I was like, well, that makes no sense. I know so many people who have done XYZ program diet and they lost weight. It worked. And then I started reading more, and it was like, how long did the weight remain off? How did they feel about themselves in their body, self worth, the whole thing? And I was like, I see, I see what you're getting at. So could you dive into that a little more?
Yeah, so I think I would be interested to see some updated research because, again, most of the studies that I have were pre 2022, just based on when I did my certification program. And as much as I try to stay on top of new research, it is overwhelming to do. But as of that time, I think the statistic was that basically 5% of diets worked, 95% of diets failed. And when you look at things like metabolic adaptation, I don't know if you've looked at the Biggest Loser study, but that is a big one where, people lost a lot of weight very quickly. Their metabolism slowed down or down regulated in order to accommodate for the way fewer calories that their body was getting. And I think it was like 6 years later, they looked at the participants' metabolic function. Most of them had gained not only all of the weight back, but more weight than they had lost initially. And their metabolisms were still slowed from the rate that they were when they were on the show. So, like, dieting can literally cause permanent damage to our bodies. So that's one thing is just the metabolic adaptation that occurs as we manipulate the number of calories that our body is getting, because ultimately we don't get to decide how many calories our bodies need. So sorry. So that's a part of it. And then the other part is really just that like weight loss generally, the idea behind weight loss is that it's a fix for a symptom of a deeper root. And so if we're not healing the root cause of our issues, whether the issue is self-worth, whether the issue is body image, body dysmorphia, whether the issue is actually rooted in health, if we're not fixing the root cause, then the diet is just a band-aid. And so what happens is we temporarily have a fix, but because we haven't healed the root cause, all of the problems just resurface. And so ultimately, what intuitive eating does is it heals the root cause. And that is where most people don't even know to look, because we've been taught by diet culture that if we lose weight, all of our problems will go away and we will be happy.
So many responses. First thing was when I was in graduate school, the metabolic adaptation was shocking to me. And I feel like it's such an underrated topic that people aren't sharing, that if you are starving yourself, your body is going to learn to survive. And so that when you stop doing that, when you stop the diet, stop the caloric deficit, whatever the phrase that you're using is, and you return to quote unquote normal eating or a higher caloric intake than you were doing before, your body is like, I want to keep this in case something happens again, in case we do something. And our bodies have evolved this way because we did not always have access to grocery stores and convenience stores and food on the regular, but we were in charge of seasons and farming patterns and so much more that we just have modernized nowadays. And so it's a survival mechanism that literally changes the way our body responds when we treat it a certain way. And so, and I didn't realize that could be like lasting for years and years and potentially ever.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to say, for most people, it won't last forever if you do the work to increase your calories, let your body start working more efficiently. In this case, obviously, the Biggest Loser is that's a very extreme case. And so who knows whether their metabolisms will ever go back to normal. But yeah, and it's so interesting because people also don't realize that when metabolic adaptation is occurring, you said, our body does what it needs to do to survive, because that is our body's job, is to keep us alive and safe, and it will do that by any means. Sometimes that is binging. Sometimes that is, if you are a biological female, not menstruating anymore, because you don't need a period to survive. You only need a period to procreate. And your body is not going to be able to grow a child if you're not getting enough food to survive, even without a child. So, like, I'll have people say, oh, yeah, like my period's really irregular. Like, I haven't gotten one in like 3 months. And I'm like, are you dieting? Are you under eating? Like, our body's job is to keep us alive and safe. So a lot of health issues that my clients have struggled with when they've come to me, we've actually fixed by just eating more food.
I love that.
I know that, like, we took a detour because you said that was point number one. So
No, no, but it was good. And I'm
we go back to
glad,
point number
no, it was perfect. And I'm glad that we both got to elaborate on that point a little bit, because I do think it's important. The second point was weight loss not being the goal, but going to the root cause, or if you know what the root cause is, fixing it. If you don't know, discovering it. In my practice, that's what I tell clients too. I'm sure it's not a surprise to a lot of people to hear that. I would say 4 out of 5 people that come to see me, one of, if not their biggest goals, is weight loss. And we have that conversation of, okay, well, what other symptoms are you experiencing? What else is going on in your body? Are you fatigued? Do you have brain fog? Do you wake up in the morning with a ton of energy? How are your menstrual cycles? Like, just digging a little bit deeper, and they'll be like, oh yeah, like I don't sleep very well, or I have horrible PMS, or whatever their other things that are happening are. And I'm like, okay, cool. Can we focus on those?
Yes.
And sometimes that is an automatic no, and they don't book with me, and that's okay. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's a shock that they can feel better in those areas because they didn't think that they could.
Yeah.
And so I appreciated when you said the root cause because it's underrated. I don't know why, but it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like at this point, luckily, very few people are coming to me for weight loss because they've followed me for long enough. Like, that's literally not what I sell. And there are still sometimes people who like I got an email from a woman who was thinking about joining my group intuitive eating program a few months ago, and she was like, I'm really healthy, but I want to lose weight because I don't like the way my body looks, and I'm also addicted to sugar. And like in my head, I'm like, okay, let me think about this because no part of being addicted to anything is healthy, but you're convinced that you're healthy. You're also convinced that you need to like the way that your body looks, which like that's a whole other conversation that we could have had. And sugar addiction, I know this is like a very controversial topic, is not real. That does not mean that we can be addicted to anything. I watched an episode of My Strange Addiction where some chick was addicted to eating glass, right? Like that doesn't mean that glass is addictive. Just like it doesn't mean that sugar is addictive. It is not an addictive substance. We can feel addicted to it for a lot of reasons, right? So like I'm reading this email and her focus is so narrow, right? I want to lose weight. And it's like, but I know that we could make your life a million times better by releasing the need for your body to look a certain way, figuring out the root of that, like that whole concept. We could improve your health and and when I say health, like physical, yes, but also mental and emotional by probably eating more carbohydrates, understanding what they do in your body, no longer feeling addicted to sugar. There's so much there, but because of diet culture, we have this like tunnel vision where it's like, no, I just need to lose weight. And it's so bizarre.
Yeah. Well, it's also not helpful that, and this is what I literally learned in graduate school, that part of the remedy for almost any chronic illness in the United States is weight loss.
And
Like,
that's what doctors tell people.
yes, yeah. And that is why at the start of my supervision, they were like, you need to read this
Yeah.
book because we know you learned that. We know
Yeah.
that's what you were told. We know that you're going to go into sessions as a brand new clinician straight out of grad school and be like, well, one of your top goals should be weight loss. Like,
It
and
makes me so mad.
it's it's challenging because I spent a lot of time, and I think I opened up to you about this before, of like going back and forth of like, can it be both? Like, can it's so hard.
Well, it is and it isn't. And I say that because weight loss in and of itself is an outcome,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not a behavior. So we actually cannot wave a magic wand and create weight loss, right? Weight loss is going to be the result of a behavior or most typically of multiple behaviors. And people love to argue with me because they'll say things like, well, when I lost 50 pounds, my LDLs were decreased and I had so much more energy and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, well, what did you do to lose the weight? Did you start exercising? Because exercise will decrease your LDLs. Did you then start sleeping better because you were exercising? That'll give you more energy. Like our health does not exist in a vacuum. Like it is not single faceted, it is multifaceted. And so, yeah, like, do I have clients that lose weight? Sure. Do I have clients that gain weight? Yeah. Are their health metrics still improving? Also, yeah, because we're focusing on the health promoting behaviors because those will improve health, whereas weight loss is not guaranteed to improve health. It is guaranteed to make the scale say a lower number. And that's it.
And how much more motivating is it to be like, okay, I have in my power to choose to eat more balanced meals or to do nourishing movement or to listen to a guided meditation in the morning. Like those are tangible things that you can choose to do. You can't choose the number that appears on the scale that morning.
Correct.
So that's what I was like visualizing when you were saying that. I was like, yeah, like how much more empowering is it to tell people what they can do than say what should be theoretically happening?
Right. Right. And people get gaslit about this all the time by healthcare providers who are like, oh, well, you just need to work out more and eat less. And it's like, you're saying that to people often who have eating disorders. You're often saying that to people who are at the gym every single day as it is. You're saying that to people who probably need another diagnosis like PCOS or Hashimoto's or whatever the case may be that's causing maybe weight gain that's not actually being caused by behaviors or lack of behaviors. So to your point, yeah, why don't we empower people instead of saying you're doing this wrong? Because this number on the scale isn't changing and my little chart from 1970 says that you're not healthy. Even though your health markers are pristine. None of this makes any sense.
Yeah. And I think that every time I also share with new clients who do hear me out and say, I understand that you would like to lose weight. I'm not going to tell you that that cannot be a goal of yours. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to focus on, and we can collaborate on that. But when they are like, well, my doctor told me that I have a high BMI, and I'm like, that was made up by insurance companies.
Also, pretty much every bodybuilder you see on stage is also categorized as obese based on BMI, even though their body fat percentage is like 6. So, there's that. Are you going to tell those bodybuilders to just like work out more and eat less? Probably not.
Probably not. So that's always been like a fun conversation. I love sending maintenance phases episode of debunking BMI to clients
So
because
good.
they're always just like, what? So like, let me save you the conversation we'll have and just listen to this on your walk or
Yeah.
like while you're getting ready for bed or whatever. Another part of intuitive eating and the work that you do and the work that I do is helping people get into rest and digest instead of being in a state of fight or flight. But I really appreciated, since knowing you and following you, the information that you put out about food fear and how that keeps you from rest and digest. So I would love for you if you could speak a little bit more on that.
Yeah. So we'll start with like just very brief polyvagal theory 101 or nervous system 101. And that is that our natural state where we are able to listen to our intuition, we're able to be present, our body is working as it should be, is, as you said, rest and digest. This is our ventral vagal state, I believe. And then our sympathetic nervous system state is activation. So this is that like anxious feeling, fear, fight or flight. I need to like run from a bear or fight a bear, whatever it is. And then our shutdown state is dorsal state, which is like dissociation, no, like can't really focus. You want to curl up and lay in bed. You can't make yourself do anything. And the reason that this is pertinent to conversations about food and food relationship is because if we are in a state of fight or flight when we're eating, our body is not going to properly digest what we're eating, because when we go into that fight or flight, the blood flow literally leaves our torso. I mean, not altogether, or like obviously our heart would stop, but like the blood flow increases in our limbs so that we can fight or flee. and decreases in our torso, and our digestive system is in our torso. And so there's not adequate blood flow and focus essentially to digest, because your body is like, I'm not worried about digesting right now. I'm worried about getting safe. And so this is really important for folks who have food fears, because if you're sitting down to eat, it doesn't matter what the food is. It does not matter whether it is cake and ice cream, whether it's a salad, whether it's a burger, whether it's a plate of veggies and chicken breast. If you are in fight or flight, you will not properly digest that food. This has implications on gut health. It has implications on really everything, because it causes us to not absorb what we're eating. And so you might feel like you eat all the time, or you eat so much food, but you are still not well nourished. You still don't have energy. You're not sleeping well, whatever that looks like. So when we think about, and this is why one of the many reasons that I take a holistic approach to health, which I just want people to understand that holistic just means a whole body approach to health. So when I'm working with my clients, we're not just talking about physical health. We're talking about spiritual health, financial health, mental health, emotional health, relational health, etc. And so taking this holistic approach is really important, because it means that we're looking at things like nervous system regulation. And it means that we care about things like, are we actually properly digesting the food that we're putting in our mouths? Because if not, we need to start there. It doesn't make any sense to think about what you're eating, when you're eating, how much you're eating, if the bare bones of the digestive process are not in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you said that it has the impact on the gut health. It has the impact on what you're absorbing. Like, not only are you just eating the healthy nutrients, but is your body able to take them, absorb them, and distribute them where they need to go? And
Right.
if you are in a constant state of stress, your sympathetic nervous system is constantly activated, it's the answer is going to be not really.
Yeah.
And I just think that's such an important part of why I really respect the work that you do, because getting people out of that state, if they are dealing with food fear, or they hear someone's voice in the back of their head, like that's going to make you fat, or that's going to go right to your butt, or that's going to go right to your thighs, or whatever the voice might be, that is not going to allow them to enjoy their food. That's not going to allow them to digest their food properly. And it just sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think about this a lot when people try to make the argument of like, well, people in Europe there's not an obesity crisis over there, whatever people say. And I'm like, they literally take long breaks. They enjoy their meals. They're eating bread. They're eating processed foods. Like, they're just enjoying it, and they're not stressed about what they're eating. Like, in Japan, I think this was in the book, they talk about like vitamin P, which is pleasure. Like, food is allowed to be pleasurable. And to your point, if we have that voice in our head, or we think that the people we're eating with are judging us, or whatever the case may be, that is going to impact your health.
Yeah. And I think even if somebody doesn't have that in their head, something that I work with clients who are very busy is they don't sit down to eat. They
Mm-hmm.
are running, they're eating in the car, which I've been guilty of. Can't say I'm not, but they're going from thing to thing. They're eating at their desk while they're focusing on a stressful project they have to get done, whatever it might be, not realizing that yes, they are getting calories in, but are those calories going to do what they need to do? Are they going to digest well? Are they going to absorb well? Are they going to make your cells work? Like all the things that food does in our bodies. And I have to chat with people about, okay, can you take a deep breath? Can you set an intention? Can you whatever it might be for you, to just take 30 seconds, 1 minute, 10 seconds, if that's all you have, to try to get yourself closer to that parasympathetic out of sympathetic.
It also impacts how we're able to interpret our fullness cues when we're eating, because if we are dysregulated, we're not hearing our body's cues as clearly. If we are eating quickly or eating while we're distracted, we are not going to feel our fullness. And so again, it's like this multifaceted, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Multifaceted experience, I guess.
Yeah.
And I usually tell people, like, if I could give you one tip that is the most health promoting tip that I could give, it is to eat slowly and mindfully. I don't care what you're eating. I don't care how much you're eating. I want you to sit down and I want you to be present. And I want you to notice the textures and the flavors and the temperatures of your food. And I want you to report back in a month and tell me how you feel, because I guarantee it will be different.
Yeah. When I was writing my book, one of the things that shocked me the most was how important chewing was, which
Mhm.
seems so silly saying it out loud because we're like, yeah, if we're eating any type of hard food, we are chewing it, of course. But are we chewing it mindfully? Are we chewing it Are we just taking a bite, one chew, and then swallowing down whole pieces of food? Are we scarfing it down? Are we having a contest with how fast we can eat it? Like,
Yeah.
where are you? So I love that piece of advice.
Yeah. I think it's so important and so overrated
And
or underrated. So underrated.
sometimes when I say it to clients, they're like, wait, what? Chewing? That's your big aha moment.
Yeah.
One other thing that I did want to touch on with you, I kind of mentioned it earlier when I was saying that my parents never commented on the way that I looked, my body, what I was eating, what I was doing, like nothing of that nature. But something that I have started thinking about is what it's like when you're commenting on somebody's body, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, whether it's critical, whether it's out of a place of love. And I think that you posted about how it's like just so normalized, but like, why is it normalized? And you can talk about this way better than I can because I've only started like mulling over it because of you. So would love for you to speak more on this topic.
Yeah, I think it's pretty loaded because there's a whole aspect of diet culture and body image that is rooted in the patriarchy and wanting to keep women small. And I think that we as women, anyone who's been socialized as a woman has been objectified and seen as a body first and a human second. And we also objectify ourselves. And so when we see someone, like, I try to be very cognizant about this. I saw a friend the other night for the first time in a while, and she was like, "Oh my God, you look amazing." And I said, "It's so good to see you. I don't want you to tell me I look amazing. That is weird. Like, why are we greeting people who we are like, we're excited to be in their presence. We're excited to spend time with them. And we're saying, oh my God, have you lost weight? Or wow, you look amazing." That is weird because we're humans first and bodies second, not the other way around. But I think when we've been conditioned to believe that we are ornaments and we're meant to be looked at and gawked at and catcalled and whatever, it becomes common to greet each other with appearance-based comments. And I think even when intentions are good, the impact is often really harmful, because at the very least, you are reiterating the fact that you see this person's appearance before you see them as a human. And at the most, you are encouraging disordered eating behaviors or eating disorders or illness or depression or something else. And so we just have to be more careful and conscientious about the things that we say. I have a client who recently went through a really, really hard breakup, really, really hard time. She lost a lot of weight. And people started saying, "Oh my God, keep it up, girl. Keep going. You look amazing. You've lost so much weight." And she literally would say, "Thanks, I've been depressed." Like, this, like, I haven't been able to keep food down. I've been super depressed. And so this is all also just condoned by the idea that thinner is better, smaller is better, whatever the case may be. And that's a conversation that I have with my clients, both from let's be conscious about what we're saying to other people, and also let's learn to advocate for ourselves and set boundaries when other people greet us that way and say, hey, it's actually not okay for you to make comments about my body. Or, hey, how about you worry about what's on your plate instead of my plate? Or whatever we need to say in order to protect our peace and work on our own relationship with food and our bodies.
Yeah. Two thoughts came up for me when you were saying that. The first was, I remember in high school when my first love high school boyfriend broke up with me for another girl. It's tragic.
Ugh, poor
I
age Kathleen.
know I felt that like pit in my stomach for weeks. And it's not like I didn't eat, but I surely was not eating my normal amount, but I was still going to school. I was still playing sports. I was still doing the things I had to do. But it was just like every day I had that like sad pit in my stomach that just made everything less enjoyable, including
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I experienced people, and I was always in a smaller body, but that was the first time when I lost weight and people were like, wow, like you're so thin, you look so good. What have you been doing? And I was like, I'm crying.
Crying. Actually, yeah, I've been being really sad.
Like being depressed. Like, so when you said that, I was like, that was my first
Mm,
like inkling of that whole scenario. The second was in college, I gained a lot of weight from doing unhealthy things. And I would notice that people stopped giving me positive compliments on the way that
mm,
I looked. No one was saying anything negative to me. I was not getting bullied of anything of that nature, but I was no longer getting those objective comments about how I looked anymore. And then I would hear somebody say that to my roommate, to
mm,
my friend, like, oh my gosh, you're so skinny. You look so good. You're glowing. And I was like, huh, I haven't heard that from anybody in a while.
mm,
And that was really two of the stories that really stuck out to me when you were saying that, of like intention. No one was trying to harm me in any of those scenarios. No one was being mean to me, any of the above. But you notice things and you take those in, and then you start to question, like, well, is there something wrong with me? Like, what should I be like being sad and not eating as much? Should I be trying to look more like them? And it can
mhm.
send you down a really negative road.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the same with like talking about your own body. I have a client who was going on a bachelorette trip coming up, and she was like, everyone talks about their bodies all the time. And it's, someone who's smaller than I am will be like, oh my God, I'm like a heifer, blah, blah, blah. And it's like those comments, even though they're directed at yourself, which like whole conversation about why you hate yourself and why you think that being in a larger body means anything about you. But again, like you're also sending a message to everyone within earshot. So maybe we just don't.
Yeah. So I appreciate you starting to speak out about that. I'm definitely gonna I have been more cognizant about not giving those types of compliments anymore, and really starting to think more about it, because when I reflect on myself and just situations, like I never want to be unintentionally making somebody question their worth or how they look or in any way. So I'm really grateful for you for sharing that, because it's not something I ever really even connected the dots, pun intended, to. Like I never really
Yeah.
thought about it until I was engaging with you and your content and was like, oh yeah, like why do we say things about people's bodies, good, bad, whatever?
Well, and one more thing I'll say about this is like, we don't even know what someone else considers good or bad. I had a friend who, for a while, every time I saw her, she would be like, oh my God, you look so skinny. I was bullied as a child because I was tiny. I looked like a toothpick. I was like the last person to grow boobs. People would tell me to eat a cheeseburger, whatever. And so that has, I mean, it's fine now. I don't really give a shit, but that was a wound for me. And so I'm sure she thought that was a compliment, but that is absolutely not how it was received. And it made me feel self-conscious and be like, fuck, I did. And especially as someone who was healing my relationship with movement and like being okay with skipping my workouts, like, of course, then that triggers, oh my God, it's because I didn't do my weightlifting workouts. Like it's because I skipped those lifting sessions. I would be beefier. Like I wouldn't be so skinny, like that can really send people into a spiral. So I even refrain from categorizing body comments as being good or bad because we just don't even know how it's going to land with someone.
So true. And more for me to mull over. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you so much and would love to end with our closing question, which is what is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Ooh. I don't know that it really has to do with this conversation, but I think I would say don't settle. I did a lot of settling for jobs, for significant others, for a lot of things, and just don't settle.
Love that. Everyone needs to hear that. And how can people find you, work with you, reach out to you, all the things?
Yeah, so I have been spending less time on Instagram recently, to be honest, but I still check my messages every day. So if you want to reach out on Instagram, you can find me there. It's just my first name dot my last name, Lara.Days. And I am also going to send you my booking link so that anyone who listens can book a free 30-minute session with me if they want some coaching, if they want to talk more about how we can work together. I'll send you that as well.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation. Like I said, it's been a long time coming. I really respect the work that you do and know that I could not do the work that I do without people like you doing your work. So just grateful for you and so glad that we complement each other and can collab in this way. So thank you.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Connecting the Dots. If there was something that really resonated with you in this episode, or you simply enjoyed the topic, please share it with a friend or leave a 5-star rating and a written review. Also, make sure you subscribe to Connecting the Dots on the streaming platform of your choice so you can be the first to listen when a new episode is released. For more information or to work with me, go to www.kathleencarney.com or follow me at Kathleen Carney Wellness on Instagram and TikTok. Follow the show on Instagram at connectingthedots.podcast and on TikTok at Connecting the Dots Podcast. I appreciate your continued support and I look forward to hanging with you next week.